I think the most challenging part is there's just so much scrutiny. People have opinions online, and unfortunately, that's part of the job and the role that we play. I think people should focus on us as people need to know that everyone's human. We're real people. I think that when things get blown out of proportion, when things get really personal and there's personal attacks on people's character, I think that's where it's over the line.
Have you ever been?
Watch her body language carefully. That pause before she answers, the way she chooses every single word like she's walking through a minefield. This is Lexie Hull on Fox News, and she's being asked about playing with Caitlin Clark. And what comes next is going to send shockwaves through Fever Nation. Because Lexie just became the first Indiana Fever player to publicly address what it's actually like being on the receiving end of Caitlin Clark's massive fan base. And based on what she said, it might not be everything fans want to hear.
The fans that we've gotten since 2024,
Okay, so since Caitlin Clark fans have come here, see, she trying not to say her name because she don't want to make it seem like she's throwing her friend under the bus, but she's trying to answer these questions. So she's talking about, since 2024, the fans, we got Caitlin Clark fans. Okay, we're following you, Lexie.
the fans that we've gotten since 2024, the rise and I think like popularity with the Indiana Fever being like a name people know. And it creates those arenas and
There it is. Since 2024, she caught herself mid-sentence because she almost said Caitlin's name directly, then pivoted to talking about the timeline instead. That's not an accident. That's someone who knows exactly how this is going to get dissected online. And notice what she's focusing on. Not the excitement of sold-out arenas or the growth of the league. She went straight to the scrutiny, the criticism, the personal attacks. For someone who's supposed to be celebrating the biggest season in Fever history, that's a telling choice of words. Here's what makes this significant. Lexie Hull isn't some role player complaining about lack of attention. She's a starter who played 34 games last season, averaging 23 minutes per game. She's been with the Fever since 2022, so she experienced the before and after of the Caitlin Clark era firsthand. She knows what it was like when the team played in front of 4,000 people, and she knows what it's like now with 17,000 screaming fans.
a million Fever jerseys and Fever shirts. I think like as an opposing team, it's like you want to win even more because it feels like there's just so many people rooting. It's exciting to have that type of follow across the country. And I think like for other teams, they have great fans and great people that show up for them. And they want to perform for those people just as much as we want to perform for ours.
Do you think the games have gotten more physical as a result of that extra motivation?
Oh, I know that for a fact. Listen, I know the games got more physical once Caitlin Clark has been targeted. We all know that. Caitlin Clark has been targeted because of the jealousy and the hate that was going on in this league. We know that. We know that much.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. She's describing opposing teams wanting to win even more when they play the Fever, and she's trying to frame it as normal competitive spirit, just teams wanting to perform for their own fans. But we all watched the 2024 season. We saw Chennedy Carter's blindside hip check on Caitlin in June. We saw Dejanai Carrington's eye poke in the playoffs. We watched Lexie herself play with two black eyes during the season because of how physical opponents got with Indiana. The interviewer even asks her directly, have the games gotten more physical? And watch what Lexie does. She deflects, says social media amplifies it, says the game itself is just physical. But she won't say yes, even though everyone who watched that season knows the answer. Sydney Colson, who signed with the Fever in the offseason, literally said other players around the league were being weird and rude to her just for joining Indiana. That's not normal competitive spirit. That's targeted hostility.
Just the game itself is physical. I don't know if it's gotten any more physical. I think social media amplifies a lot of that.
Social media amplifies a lot.
Nah, Lexie, you're not keeping it real. I love you, Lexie. You're not keeping it real. You know it's definitely been more physical. You know that, y'all get it the worst. You was running around with two black eyes. You was running around with two black eyes, Lexie Hull. Tough as nails. You tough as nails, okay? You was running around with two black eyes. because you play for the Fever. You play with Caitlin Clark. They don't like none of y'all. They don't like none of y'all. You heard what, bro, there was players that joined the Indiana Fever that other players around the league was hitting them up like, yo, like Sydney Colson even said like people was being rude and being weird to her because she joined the Indiana Fever and all this stuff. Like, yeah, it's a real thing.
And there's the diplomatic answer. People want to win. Competitors fighting for their team. All true, but it's also completely sidestepping the actual question about stereotypes and how opposing players approach games against the Fever differently. Think about what Lexie's navigating here. She's trying to be honest about the challenges without throwing Caitlin under the bus. She's trying to acknowledge the negativity without alienating the fan base that's responsible for her getting national TV interviews in the first place. She's trying to be diplomatic about opposing players while knowing full well that some of them targeted her team all season long. This is the impossible position that comes with being Caitlin Clark's teammate. You get the fame, the attention, the sold-out arenas, the playoff appearances, but you also get the scrutiny from fans who expect perfection, the targeting from opponents who resent your success, and the constant pressure of knowing that everything you say will be analyzed by millions of people.
On the receiving end of one of those character attacks?
I mean, I'm sure I have. I try not to read comments for that reason.
She said, I'm sure I have. I try not to read comments for that reason. Now this is on Fox News, you guys. We're gonna get into more of it. But this was a response.
She tries not to read comments. That right there tells you everything about how intense it's gotten. This is a professional athlete who's active on social media, who has 89,000 Instagram followers, and she's actively avoiding reading what people say about her because the personal attacks have crossed a line. And here's the context that makes this even more complicated. Lexie Hull is a streaky shooter. During the 2024 season, she shot 35.8% from three-point range. When she's hot, she's incredibly valuable. When she's cold, the criticism from Caitlin's fanbase gets brutal. We're talking thousands of comments dissecting every missed shot, questioning whether she deserves her starting spot, comparing her unfavorably to other players the Fever could have signed. That's the reality of playing next to the most popular player in women's basketball. Your bad games don't just get criticized by your own team's fans anymore. They get criticized by millions of people who are primarily invested in one player's success. And if you're not contributing to that success, you become a target.
Come on.
Attention. I think we're still showing up the same way that we do every day. But like knowing that there's more eyes on us, knowing that there's more seats in the stands, all of that is exciting. But I don't think it necessarily changes how we go about the game, go about our relationships, go about what we post on social media. I think it adds to the engagement. I think that's really the biggest difference.
What do you think is the reputation of the Fever among fans, but also among opposing players?
Listen to how she frames this. More eyes on us, more seats in the stands, more engagement. She's listing the positives, but there's something missing from her tone. There's no excitement there. It's factual, almost clinical. Compare that to how Caitlin Clark talks about the growth of the league, with genuine enthusiasm and energy. And Lexie makes a point of saying it doesn't change how they go about the game, their relationships, or what they post on social media. That's defensive language. That's someone pushing back against an implied criticism that the attention has changed them or made them behave differently. But here's what we need to understand about the business side of this. Lexie Hull is entering restricted free agency this offseason. Her contract with the Fever is up, and based on the WNBA's collective bargaining agreement, Indiana can match any offer she receives from another team, but they're not obligated to bring her back. So when Lexie's doing this interview on Fox News, talking about the challenges of playing with Caitlin, she's also potentially auditioning for other teams. She's signaling that she's experienced, that she can handle pressure, but also maybe that she's open to a fresh start somewhere without quite as much intensity.
Oh, man. Oh, no. Say it ain't so. Lexie, come on, 6 Lexie Hulls. Come on, Lexie. Lexie Hull is going viral for what she had to say about being teammates with Caitlin Clark and Caitlin Clark fans. And
go back and watch the original content creator's reaction to this interview. He's panicking. Say it ain't so, Lexie. You're not trying to leave, are you? And that panic is justified because losing Lexie Hull would be a significant blow to Indiana's chemistry and defensive identity. But let's be real about what's happening here. The Fever have decisions to make this offseason. They need to build around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. Lexie Hull is a valuable role player, but she's also going to command a bigger salary after contributing to a playoff team. The question becomes, is Indiana willing to pay that price, or do they use that money elsewhere? And from Lexie's perspective, she has to consider what's best for her career. Does she want to continue being the third or fourth option on a team where every mistake gets magnified by millions of fans? Or does she want to go somewhere she can be a primary scoring option without quite as much pressure? These are the complicated dynamics that don't get talked about enough when we discuss the Caitlin Clark effect on the WNBA.
Oh, a lot of stuff is magnified because of social media and all that. I don't know, bro. I don't want to say she throwing Caitlin Clark fans under the bus, but damn, it sounds like you throwing Caitlin Clark fans under the bus. I got to keep it real. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. Love Lexie. I don't want to get crazy, but I didn't necessarily love some of that right there. Like, I don't know, man. A lot of that. Now, you didn't say her name, but like when you're saying, oh, since 2024, in the like we know Caitlin.
And here's where the content creator's analysis gets interesting. He's calling out Lexie for not keeping it real about the increased physicality. He's pointing out that she played with two black eyes, that Sydney Colson said players were being rude to her for joining the Fever, that there's clearly been targeted aggression toward Indiana. And he's right. Lexie is being diplomatic to a fault, but can you blame her? What's she supposed to say on Fox News? Yeah, opposing players hate us and try to hurt us because they're jealous of Caitlin? That's not going to help anything. That's just going to create more drama and make her a target for even more criticism. This is the tightrope walk that Fever players have to navigate constantly. Be honest enough to maintain credibility, but diplomatic enough to avoid creating bulletin board material for opponents or alienating the fan base that's paying attention to you for the first time in your career. So let's break down what's really happening here. Because this Lexie Hull interview reveals something much bigger than one player's frustration with social media criticism. What we're witnessing is the growing pains of the Caitlin Clark era in the WNBA. And those growing pains are affecting everyone in her orbit in ways that fans need to understand. First, let's talk about the fan base dynamics. When Caitlin Clark got drafted to Indiana in April 2024, she brought millions of fans with her. Not Fever fans. Caitlin Clark fans. There's a crucial difference. These are people who've been following her since Iowa, who are invested specifically in her success, and who view her teammates through the lens of whether they're helping or hurting Caitlin's performance. That creates an impossible standard for players like Lexie Hull. When Lexie shoots 6 for 10 from 3 and scores 18 points, she's a hero. When she goes 1 for 7 and scores 3 points, suddenly there are thousands of comments questioning her basketball IQ, her work ethic, whether she deserves her roster spot. And that volatility, that constant judgment from millions of people who don't really care about you as an individual player, that takes a psychological toll. Now compound that with what's happening on the court. Lexie mentioned that opposing players want to win more when they play the Fever because of all the attention. But it goes deeper than that. There's legitimate resentment throughout the WNBA about how much coverage Caitlin gets compared to established stars who've been grinding in this league for years. Ja Wilson won her 3rd MVP in 2024. She's the best player in the world right now. But Caitlin Clark, who didn't even make the All-WNBA first team, gets 10 times the media coverage. That's not Ja's fault, and it's not Caitlin's fault, but it creates tension. And when teams play Indiana, some of that tension manifests as extra physicality, harder fouls, more trash talk. Lexie experienced that firsthand. She got elbowed in the face multiple times during the 2024 season, and when she tries to talk about it diplomatically in interviews, fans accuse her of not being real. But when she acknowledges it directly, she gets accused of complaining or making excuses. She can't win. Then there's the business side that nobody wants to talk about. Lexie Hull made $76,535 in 2024 under the WNBA's salary structure. That's her entire salary for the season. Now she's a restricted free agent, and she could potentially get offers in the $110,000 range based on her production and the Fever's playoff success. But here's the catch. If she stays in Indiana, she's still going to be the 3rd or 4th option behind Caitlin and Aaliyah Boston. She's still going to face intense scrutiny from millions of fans. She's still going to deal with opponents targeting her team. And she's still going to have to navigate this impossible media landscape where everything she says gets analyzed and criticized. Or she could sign with a team like Dallas or Washington, be a primary scoring option, play in relative anonymity compared to the Fever spotlight, and potentially have a longer, less stressful career. That's a legitimate choice she has to consider. And this is where Fever fans need to have some empathy. Yes, Caitlin Clark brought unprecedented attention and success to Indiana. The team went from 13 to 27 in 2023 to 2020 in 2024 and made the playoffs for the first time since 2016. That's incredible. But that success came with trade-offs that affect everyone in the organization. When Lexie says there's so much scrutiny and personal attacks cross the line, she's not exaggerating. Go look at the comments on any Fever game highlights when Lexie has a bad shooting night. It's brutal. People questioning her intelligence, her effort, whether she's worthy of playing next to Caitlin. That's not normal sports criticism. That's parasocial obsession turned toxic. And the thing is, Lexie Hull is actually really good at basketball. She's an elite defender who can guard multiple positions. She's a willing cutter who moves without the ball. She spaces the floor and hits open threes at a respectable rate. In a normal situation, she'd be a beloved role player that fans appreciate for her contributions. But nothing about the Indiana Fever situation is normal anymore. The expectations are sky high, the media attention is relentless, the pressure to perform is immense, and players like Lexie are caught in the middle, trying to balance their own career aspirations with the reality of playing in the most intense spotlight in women's basketball. So when you watch this Fox News interview and hear Lexie carefully choosing her words, understand what she's really saying. She's saying the attention is overwhelming. She's saying the criticism gets personal and crosses lines. She's saying opponents treat them differently. She's saying it's harder than it looks from the outside, and she's also potentially saying goodbye. Because if another team offers her a significant raise and a chance to be more than just Caitlin Clark's teammate, she might take it. And Fever fans would have to accept that their team's success created a situation that some players don't want to be part of long term. That's not Caitlin's fault. It's not the fans' fault individually. It's just the reality of what happens when one player becomes so transcendently popular that everyone around her gets swept up in the chaos. The question for Indiana's front office is, how do they keep players like Lexie Hull happy while managing the Caitlin Clark phenomenon? How do they protect their roster from the toxic elements of the fanbase while embracing the positive attention? How do they build a sustainable winning culture when the pressure and scrutiny are unlike anything else in the WNBA? Those are questions that need answers this offseason. Because if Lexie Hull walks away, she won't be the last Fever player to decide that playing next to the most popular athlete in women's sports isn't worth the headaches that come with it. So here's what I want to know from you. If you were Lexie Hull, would you stay in Indiana and run it back with Caitlin and Aliyah? Or would you take your talents somewhere with less pressure and more opportunity to be a featured player? Drop your honest take in the comments because this decision is going to shape the Fever's future more than people realize.